And with our big lead, NDTV has accessed exclusive details about Nikhil Gupta's extradition to the US from the Ministry of Justice of the Czech Republic. Well, the ministry has confirmed that Nikhil Gupta was apprehended and then taken into provisional custody at the request of the United States of America. Well, the USA also moved an extradition request in August 2023 for conspiracy to commit murder for hire. Now, Czech authorities as well as the Prague Municipal Court have found the extradition to be admissible. However, this decision hasn't been legally acted upon as yet. But why has this actually come to the fore? Well, in a fresh twist to the alleged Kill Pannu plot, Nikhil Gupta's family has moved the Supreme Court seeking intervention and immediate relief. Now remember, Nikhil Gupta is an Indian accused by the Justice Department of the United States of conspiring to assassinate US-based Sikh terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. Now the Supreme Court adjourned the matter till the 4th of January. Now, Mr. Nikhil Gupta, currently in a prison in the Czech Republic, had asked India to intervene in the extradition proceedings initiated by the US. Now, the petition was filed by a family member identified only as Mr. X in the petition. Now, the petition said that Nikhil Gupta's illegal detention in Prague is something that should be concerning for India as well. And it also said that as a law-abiding citizen, he also fears his life. Most startlingly, he also claims that his human rights and religious rights are being exploited in prison there in Prague. Well, the court acknowledged this to be an extremely sensitive matter for the Ministry of External Affairs, and Justice Sanjeev Khanna first directed the petitioner to go before the court which is outside India. My colleague Vishnu Shom gets us the details, but first let's listen in to what Nikhil Gupta's lawyer had to say.
We have filed a petition by a near friend of an Indian citizen who has been illegally detained in the Republic of Czech and is now facing extradition proceedings to the US. We have filed the petition seeking certain assistance from the ministry that would be available to any Indian citizen who has been illegally detained abroad. So the Supreme Court has directed the matter to be listed on the 4th and a copy to be served on the government, and the Supreme Court will hear the matter on the 4th now. There is an allegation of conspiracy and an attempt to murder a gentleman, a US citizen, and it is our case that he has been illegally roped into the entire issue and faces extradition charges to the US today.
Nikhil Gupta, the Indian national who is allegedly involved in a plot in connivance with the government of India to eliminate the Khalistani separatist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu in the United States, has now filed a habeas corpus petition in the Supreme Court, which was heard, which will come up again for hearing on the 4th of January. The key point that he actually says over here is that he is at the center of grave differences between America and India, and that he is by no means involved in the charges against him. Where is Nikhil Gupta right now? He is in prison in the Czech Republic. Now, his petition has a lot of interesting details. He says as he exited Prague airport, he was bundled into a black SUV by a couple of people, and that they drove around Prague for several hours. He was questioned. After asking them repeatedly who they were, they said that they were American agents. He was then detained, put into Czech custody. Remember, there is an extradition agreement between the Czech Republic and the United States, so the US pushing to have him sent back to America, but there is a legal process on in the Czech Republic as well. He says that he was subjected to a blood test as well. On the basis of the blood test reports, he was told that he has a communicable disease, and on the basis of that, he was put into solitary confinement. He says that he's been forced to eat pork and beef despite stating that he is a vegetarian. He says that he was denied permission to make phone calls for several days to his relatives or to those close to him. He says that consular access was granted to the Indian embassy in Prague only 20 days after the detention took place, which is why he says that his basic rights are being denied. He wants the Supreme Court to be involved, but the Supreme Court, while it has asked the government to look into this issue, may not perhaps be the right court to be looking at all of these charges, all of which are being heard in a court in the Czech Republic. At the same time, they've said that you can come back to us on the 4th of January.
So, well, as Vishnu said, the Supreme Court might not be the right court as far as this case is concerned. Let's try and explore that angle more. And joining me now on India Global, Aniket Ujjwal Nikam, an advocate with the Bombay High Court, somebody who looks at these matters very closely. Mr. Nikam, many thanks for joining us on India Global this week. Looking at the Supreme Court's jurisdiction first, as far as these cases are concerned, what can the Supreme Court do essentially, and what are the legal options before Nikhil Gupta? What recourse can he take?
In the first place, let me tell you that Supreme Court has jurisdiction over the entire country. All issues, legal issues that the Supreme Court can suo motu take cognizance of. But issues that are arising out of India, my fear is that Supreme Court will not have jurisdiction over those issues. And rightly so, today the Supreme Court also suggested the learned counsel of the petitioner that why don't you approach the concerned forum, which is the ZEC Court, to ventilate all your grievances. Now, in this matter, what is being alleged is that his fundamental rights are being violated. He's being detained, and there is a lot of torture that is happening to him. Now, all these issues he can also raise simultaneously, probably not just before the concerned ZEC Court, but also before the international courts, which have got the jurisdiction to entertain whenever there is violation of human rights. But to come to India and say that because he's an Indian citizen and therefore the Supreme Court should intervene, I think it is slightly far-fetched. But as a lawyer, as a student of law, what I also feel, and I'm not second-guessing what the Honorable Supreme Court would do, that is within their sphere. But of course, the government can be asked, the External Affairs Ministry, if they can look into this and if they can get a representation, somebody to represent him over there before the court of law. Can that happen? Can the Indian government assist him in that? Is something that the government can look into, provided the government is willing to, and if it is something that appeals to the government, provided there is whatever is being said in the petition merits consideration.
Right. So that's, of course, an interesting point there, and particularly because in the plea he talks about human rights violation as well, the international courts could be a recourse that Nikhil Gupta's family could take. But of course, it is something that is beyond the Supreme Court's jurisdiction. That matter will be heard now on the 4th of January.